Major support for Do the Math has been provided by Chevron, the Kern County Superintendent of Schools, Edison International, Valley Strong Credit Union, California Resources Corporation, Bakersfield West Rotary Stroop Family Foundation, Panama Buena Vista Union School District, Bakersfield City School District, Kern High School District, and AC Electric Company, with additional production assistance provided by these supporters of education in Kern County and throughout the state of California.
Today we are at Highgate, and I am with Deryk Gross, Director of Home Building. Hi Deryk, how you doing today?
Good. Yourself?
Great. Can you kind of give our viewers a little bit of a rundown about your history and your background in building?
My history, I grew up in a home building family. My dad worked for a home builder, and I started, my first actual real job was out in the field cutting freeze blocks on a radio saw. So from there I went to being a framer, and then my dad taught me how to estimate. And then I worked my way into the home building industry through the office.
And how long have you been in this business here?
I've been with Castle Cooke 13 years, and prior to that I worked for another home builder for 9 years.
And can you kind of tell us where we're at right now?
We are in Castle Cooke's newest community, Highgate.
And how long has Highgate been here?
It has been here for 4 years.
And what are we doing today?
Today I'm going to show you how we take or come up with a concept for a home and how it comes from our thinking in our minds to actual piece of paper.
Okay, so we have some drawings here, right?
Yes.
So these are, actually they look like floor plans.
Yes. Well, they're sort of floor plans.
Okay, kind of run me through this.
This is our, what they call a line art or a conceptual idea. So we take our idea, we want to have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home to an architect, and we kind of give them a square footage that we're looking for, and the architects will start coming up with these conceptual ideas. So in this case, this is an idea that we had for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. And as over time, the home actually started to change a little bit. And as we meet as a group, we start to evolve this idea. So currently it's a 2-bedroom home or a 2-bedroom garage. It starts, now we started expanding it. We see some possibility in that design.
So can we bring these up here? So we see the difference. What I'm seeing is, like you said, this is obviously just a 2 garage and this is a 3 garage, correct?
Correct.
Okay, because I know when I had my home built, we were given plans and then we started making adjustments as well to it. So this is like the first, what the architect comes with, and then you guys come back with, hey, we want to add this.
Exactly. And over time, as conversations start to evolve from it, we start to add features that we know are important on our market. So we've added a double entry door. We added a Jack and Jill bathroom. And we added more space in our great room area for the family to live in.
That's exactly what I had added, is the Jack and Jill. So here, again, kind of, these are dimensions, correct?
Correct.
That are on the drawing. Okay.
Correct.
So here, you said you added more dimension to this area?
That's correct. So we actually made the house wider, giving it more room through the middle. And so that increased the livable square footage in these areas.
Okay, so once you've done that, so you've given them, is this the final or is it even more changes?
This would be the final floor plan, and this will be our next step would be taking it to what they call construction documents.
Okay. And what are those?
Those construction documents, they're actually the plans that we will build with.
Okay. So those are the actual like big architect, like you roll out.
Yeah.
From there.
So the next thing we'll start to look at is we start to come up with ideas about elevation styles. Again, a conceptual thinking. What it's going to look like. So again, we take with architects and we come up with ideas, what we'd like to see. So in this case, this is a designer's idea of what we call a mid-century elevation style.
When you're talking elevation, okay, is this more of a 2D? And then now we're looking at more of a 3-dimensional?
They're all 2-dimensional on the paper,
okay,
but the floor plan itself is laid out for 2D. The elevation, we get a 2D, but it gives us more depth to it. We start to look at how the house is going to look from the street.
Okay.
So we take the conceptual idea, and then we start refining those ideas.
Wow.
And over time, we kind of start to land on what we like. And this is the actual result of our video flyover of the home you saw at the beginning.
Now, do people get choices of how they would like the front of this to look?
In our product line, we predetermine those elevation styles. And some chances where if you build a custom home, you can predetermine how you want it to look.
Okay, so before we go back to the studio, what do you have coming up next for us?
Next, we'll actually see the construction documents. So you can see all the dimensions laid out for the floor plan and the elevations.
Hi, we are back here at Highgate, and I am with Deryk Gross, Director of Home Building. Now, we were just talking about taking an idea, right?
Yes.
Now, we're going a little bit further with that idea.
We take the idea and we actually now have the architect and structural engineer create the construction documents.
Yeah.
So these are the documents that we use for permitting.
Okay, so, and these are all done at the architect, right?
And yes, and our structural engineer provide the components for this, yes.
Okay, well, just looking at it as a home buyer, it's pretty intense looking. Can you kind of walk us through what this all means?
Yes. These are the plans that our construction contractors will actually utilize to build the house. So this is their blueprint, if you will.
So this is on site.
It's on site with them. So the plan itself is the cover. And this, if you remember, is the floor plan, the house that we were looking at earlier.
Which is a much bigger scale here.
And all the scaling's done to a quarter for 1 foot. So if you take a scale, every quarter inch becomes 1 foot to the house.
Okay, so if I were to go out, if this was actually done, and I could kind of calculate exactly how big that wall in actual will be to build.
Correct. So within the floor plan, as you notice, they have all the bedrooms or bathrooms, the kitchens, everything, all the windows are called out by sizes. The doors are called out by sizes. And then all dimensions to them, each room is provided as well.
These are pretty detailed. Looking at it, I mean, everything has some kind of dimension to it.
Correct. When the framer and the foundation, they start by looking at all these dimensions, and that's how they create the perimeters. And so for each component, so for instance, when we have a kitchen island with a sink, the foundation trenching company, they need to know where they have to trench that to get to the plumbing lines. So they have to dimension that out.
And that has to be done all before the foundation is poured, correct?
Correct. So we take the floor plan itself, is what the framer concrete guys they utilize to lay out the home. And then as we talked earlier, we have the elevation. And this is where all the work, what it really looks really cool, starts to happen. So again, everything's dimensioned and laid out on the plans. The little bubbles themselves in there, they're actually called details. And so those are specific how we were asking the contractors to construct those areas.
So kind of give us a little about these. I'm looking at these elevation notes over here and general notes. Are these for obviously while they're building something for them to refer to?
Yeah. So each note, for instance, the note number 1, we have a 2x8 fascia material. So if you within the materials, they can find that note on the elevation and it corresponds to the notes. It gives everybody a chance, they can look at it and develop how to build the home. So if we go actually into the details, a little bit more into the detail of the plan, you'll start to see these components of it. So if I'm looking for a D1 or D2 sheet.
Oh, wow.
So the detail they provide in there, the architect provides, how to construct the column for one of the elevations.
So this would be the column, correct, right here?
Correct.
And it's kind of giving them exactly on how to construct that.
All the dimensions, all the material requirements, all the space in between it, it's all there for them.
There is so much detail done in this. Approximately how long does it take to come up with this whole set of plans?
It takes our architect and structural engineer usually 4 weeks to complete the plans.
Wow, just 4 weeks. That's amazing. I would think it would take longer because there's just so much details.
Yeah, there's a lot of, they do use a lot of common details. When you're we're a production home builder, so we like to repeat things. For instance, I'm very good at driving to work every morning, but if I drive a different way, I might make a mistake. So we try and utilize similar items throughout each construction of the home.
Okay.
The other component within these plans is the structural component, and this is where all the math is occurring for seismic loading, wind loading, and dead live loads. So here is the actual plan of the foundation, and this we'll be looking at shortly. The dark or shaded portion is what they call a footing, and that's the depth of the, goes down into the ground. And the light area is this livable slab area. The components in these, they call them ABs or HDs. These are actually what they call the shear walls, and those are the hold downs that will go inside the concrete to hold the wall up.
We are back here at Highgate, and I am with Deryk Gross. We left off talking about looking at the blueprints, correct?
Yes.
Of what the house is going to look like, but we didn't really talk about where the house is going to be.
Right. The land is based on large parcels. So for instance, our current development, we're moving west. And so our next parcel is actually laid out in the shaded area.
So this is the shade area where you are going to be building next.
That's correct. When we take the large parcels, we want to start thinking about how the lots are going to look in there. And so again, we go to an architect and we start explaining this is kind of what we were thinking. And they came up with this for this area.
Now, how do they figure out how many homes can be in a certain area?
What we'll do is we'll provide them with a typical lot width we'd like to have and depth. And from there, they start moving things around and considering the streets and the walks and the parkways. And they come up with this concept. They also utilize a lot of this overall area divided by what we're looking for.
Okay, looking at this, was this hand drawn? Or is this all machine generated?
It's machine overlaid, but a lot of the notes, as you can tell, are the hand notes. But there is a computer program that does give them the optimal layout for lots. So we can say we'd like to have 100 lots in this area, and the computer will figure out what the optimal layout would look like. The human interaction is we want it to look kind of neat. We want it to feel comfortable as people live there.
Now, when they give this to you, like with the house, do you look at it and think, okay, let's make some adjustments here or there?
We do. We go through a couple of them. So, and this is, as we kind of keep looking at it and trying to figure out how we want to present the product, this ended up being one of the final layouts.
So here, obviously, this is the final layout. What is this right here? What does this represent?
This determines the type of neighborhoods, which ends up being the lot width that we're shooting for. And again, it's an area calculation.
So do all these lots have equal dimensions, or are some lots larger or smaller?
Some lots are larger. These are actually 65, these are 60 wide, these are 50 wides in here.
Hence the color coding.
Exactly.
And is that what this is for? Is the key for that, to
Yes.
show that information?
Mm-hmm. And so as we come up with our idea and we decide this is what we'd like to have, we start towards the actual mapping process. So it becomes a vested tentative map through the city. So we submit that through the city and they go through their planning approval process. And then ultimately it ends up being a tract map. So this is signed by all the parties and this is approved by the city council. And we come up with actual lots and dimensions.
Now this is what I'm used to seeing, because when I built my house, I remember we were able to look at and find our lot, what we wanted, and they had shown us this.
This is the tract map that has it will have the APN numbers, and it also has, the width of the lot, the dimensions of the lot, all the ideas of monumentation to show where the lot is. So whenever our civil engineers, they'll actually stake based upon the map.
So if I'm interested in building, I can see this. If I come into your office, I can see this. Would you give me directions to that lot so I can actually see it in reality, exactly where it's located?
Yes.
And go out there?
So as we kind of work our way through that, based upon the map, we start determining where we want to start building. And the next segment will show the plot plan which looks like this. The house on the lot. And then from there, the actual foundation is poured based upon that plot in relationship to the lot.
So from here, now we're just on that one where the house is going to be sitting.
Right.
This is what the outline of the plot of that, what the plans would look like, correct?
Correct.
Okay, wow. There is so much behind this and so much math, my goodness. Today we're continuing our series out at Highgate, and I'm with Deryk Gross, Director of Home Building. How are you doing today?
Great. Yourself?
Great. Okay, so when we left off, we were actually looking at how the architect works with you and develops the homes. From there, where are we at now?
Right now, we're actually on a lot or a plot plan. Remember the plot plan? So now we're actually taking what we saw from the architectural perspective, the lot and the house, and now they've actually trenched the house on the lot.
So when we were talking last, we were all talking scale. So when they have the plans out here, they really have to take that scale to be able to measure all this out.
Correct. When the trencher comes out, they actually use property pins that are identified on the front and back of the lot, and they pull the dimensions from the plot plan to start from a corner. And then they start the activity. They will actually chalk all the exterior footing locations and interior footing locations. And then they will actually bring a big trenching wheel out, and he starts digging this activity. So it is all based on the plan.
And how deep are they? Because it probably is a set depth.
It is set. Their bucket's 14 by 18 typically, so it goes down, try to get down to 18 inches. So that it feels it's all the way in.
So from there, obviously they've dug it out. And then I'm seeing some poles and wood. Can you explain what all that is?
Yeah. After they've trenched it, they come back and they do what they call banding the lot. So they'll band it, and this is where all the exterior, this is actually the exterior portion of the slab and the interior portion of the footings. So this, if you watch, you can see this is actually the outside of the house.
So where we're standing right now, will they be pouring slab right here?
They will be. This is actually the garage section. It's hard to see, but that's the entrance of the house. And that's actually the entry.
Okay, so all of this will be poured right here as well as here.
Yeah, this is all the slab, and this is actually the entry porch. And inside, this is the house. So right now, I'm actually, if I recall, I'm standing in the master bathroom area.
Hence all the plumbing.
Yeah. So the next step they do is they actually will place the interior plumbing. This is all the sewer lines, if you will, or gray water. And it runs it all along and actually will evacuate out of the house on the side.
So over here then, I'm taking, is that a kitchen?
That is correct. This is actually the kitchen island location.
So the trenching comes in, and obviously the plumbers are needed out here, right, with all this? And this is the time that they get all of the majority of their work set, correct?
They get the underground work done, yeah.
Okay, so really the wood represents the frame to where the cement will. So will the cement, when the foundation is poured, will the cement go up to the top of that wood?
Yes, it does.
What else is needed here besides the trenching, the plumbing? And I'm seeing all the strings.
The strings are utilized for them, again, to dimension where the locations are. So it's almost like it's a map for the people that do the work inside the house here.
So it's almost, I'm looking at it as like a big graph.
Exactly, exactly. So they are able to dimension off of a form board to a certain location, and they know from that location they can go all the way back to know where that drain is. And that's how they're able to locate everything. Everything, again, is based upon the plan. So they follow the plans all the way down to the inch.
So before they do the cement work, are all these trenches and everything filled in?
Yeah, they're all filled in. They call them backfilled. And then they actually start what they call a grading operation. So we push all the native soil back in all the trenches, and then we'll place the reinforcement material, the mesh wire, and then we lift it up what they call chair dobies, so it sits above it. And so when you pour the concrete over it, the wire mesh sits in the middle of the concrete.
Wow, so many little details just to get the foundation, because you would think, how come you just can't come, dig out the square or, you know, the shapes that you need, pour the foundation and go, but you can't do that.
No, it has to stay in one spot, so
Yeah.
it locks it in by the footings.
All right, so there's so much more to find out about just foundation. And we are back here at Highgate with Deryk Gross. Now, Deryk, we left off, we were just seeing how the foundation is just starting, right?
Yes.
Can you kind of tell us here now what is going on? What's the next steps that are happening?
What they're doing right now is they're doing what they call grading and setting for the foundation steel.
Okay, go ahead, because I'm seeing like rebarb, I'm seeing tractors, there's just so much going on.
There is. So last time you remember we were looking at the slab that had trenches inside of it. Well, all that's been backfilled, and then we use a vapor barrier for a vapor protective of our slabs, and then they place sand on top of it.
As I can see that they're doing right now.
Correct. The next step that they'll be doing is they put what we call chair dobies, and then they'll start laying in the wire mesh.
Okay.
Along with that, they start what they put the rebar inside the footing.
So kind of go into a little bit more detail about the rebarb into the footing, because that's kind of terminology I'm not familiar with.
So we are structural engineers, require reinforcement of the concrete. So the steel rebar is in there and it creates a connectivity to the concrete and all the steel around the house. It essentially locks the concrete into the footing, if you will.
So where does the rebarb go? Is it going across?
It actually goes inside the footing. If you recall, the trencher created a 14 by 18 trench.
Yes.
It's going to be set inside that footing and inside interior footings as well.
Oh, okay.
If you recall, each time they do this creates, again, the connectivity of that concrete. It holds its strength together. That's
So
very
it
important for the
doesn't-
house.
It's not moving. A lot of
Exactly.
times they talk about houses settling,
Mm-hmm.
and is that part of that process, holding that settling so it doesn't move that much?
Correct. It is. The slab itself becomes the actual stage, if you will, for the house to sit on top of. And the slab, it won't move. It just allows everything to be in the natural spot all the time.
So what is going on with the tractor right now?
The tractor, what he's doing is he's just pulling excess material out of the area. What they'll do is they just drop the sand in and then just move it around inside the slab itself.
So can we talk about leveling? Where are they trying to get to a certain level? Or I know the strings, is that where the cement's going to be coming up to?
That is correct. If you look at how the string line sets, it's on the top of the form. That's going to end up being the top of the slab. So they're pulled the strings out so the guys have a good idea of how much depth they need or height they'll need on the finished material, the sand itself.
And can we go down there and see, because he's actually laying the rebarb right now? So are these already preset? Because I see that he has like a corner piece right now, right there. Are those already pre-done?
Actually, they have a guy that knows what to do really well over there.
Oh, so he's actually bending it and getting prepared over on spot.
Exactly. And of course, the rebar has different sizes. So the sizes are correlated to the diameter of the rebar itself. And that's to enhance strength level.
So it's just one piece of rebarb that's going all along it.
They all end up being tied together. So I think they're 14 feet long. So they tie them all together to make that. Essentially, it will work as one piece all the way around the slab.
So what is the last thing they need to do in this area before they pour? Are they doing everything, or is there really something else that's still missing?
The last thing they'll do is, they'll put the chairs and they'll put the wire mesh on top of it. And once that's done, after they've done all the tie-ins of the steel, it's ready for concrete.
And that wire mesh, is it tied down rebarb then?
No,
or is it
it's
laid?
free-floated.
Oh, okay. Wow, just so much that goes into this. What's the time frame here? From what we saw with the start of the dig to laying of the cement,
We schedule 2 weeks.
2 weeks for this process.
So they'll trench it, and then they'll come back in the underground. And we have a series of inspections we also do too. So that house that we just saw before with the underground, and that has to be finalized, and then the city will actually inspect our work and make sure it conforms to all the requirements. Then the next step is they will come in and do the grading operations.
Will they look at it once the cement is done? Or
No, they don't.
That's
Only
another.
look at it before.
Okay.
So there's 2 inspections before, the underground, and then they'll do the pre-slab.
Awesome. Well, we have a lot more. We're going to go and see actually the foundation laid out. And we are back here at Highgate with Deryk Gross, Director of Home Building. Deryk, where we left off, they were just starting to pat everything down, getting ready to lay that rebarb, right?
Correct.
And now look where we're at.
This is the finished result of the slab.
Okay, can you walk us through this?
Yes. If you remember last shot, the trenching and the foundation for the footings themselves, so that's the exterior of the house. If you notice each one, they also have the bolts stabbed in.
These right here, yes.
That's correct. And what ends up happening with the bolts is we'll see when they start framing the home, is this actually holds the frame to the slab itself.
Oh, it is the bolts.
Correct.
Okay.
So if you remember also, the trench itself was a certain width and depth. That's been all filled in with concrete. And then those string lines that we talked about being the height of the slab, everything was screeded to that height.
To where those strings were.
Correct.
Now, also we're seeing all of the plumbing of what you want shown, correct?
Yes, so the kitchen island,
Uh-huh.
there it is right there.
It's right down there. And then obviously the others, is that a bathroom over there?
That is correct. That's actually the master bathroom. So all the gray water or sewer water, if you will, it's all been stubbed up and it's ready for connections.
To go.
So
So why, I'm looking at these cuts within. What are those for?
Actually, we cut those to actually allow the slab to crack, if you will, because concrete's never going to be perfectly together. So we allow the slab to crack in these locations. We want it to crack there, and it stays in those locations.
To set that foundation. And I'm also noticing, obviously, all the framework is gone.
Correct. All the form boards are stripped off. It's all set up to go for framing to come on top of it.
Can you kind of go in a little bit more about the cement? Because obviously there's mathematics in that as well.
Correct. The structural engineer has a certain requirement of the PSI that we utilize. We also go above it a little bit. So we utilize a 3,500 PSI concrete mix.
Can I ask you what PSI means?
Pressure per square inch. So the concrete, we want our concrete to be strong, and we also want it to be dry, so no water starts to emanate from it. So it's really, there's a lot of math involved in it, and also the math includes all the footings and everything that we saw last time. How it all goes together, and when we start seeing the framing, you'll see how it all ties together.
And obviously this light goes back to the plans and all the mathematics that you put in, because you've had to figure out how much to bring per square footage of what the home is going to be.
Exactly. Our concrete subcontractor, he actually has a little wheel and he goes around the whole house plan and he calculates it out with a pencil. So he figures out the total quantity areas that he needs for his footings. He figures out the total livable area that he needs for the actual slab. And he also calculates all the area for the garage slab.
Let's talk about the garage slab, because I'm noticing that it's lower than the rest of the house.
It is. We depress the garage slab so individuals, they can wash it out and the water doesn't get inside the house. And it also gives us a better fall into our driveway.
Now, is this done exactly the same as the rest of the house?
We'll actually pour the livable square footage area first, and then they'll come back and pour the garage slab itself. They can do it at one time, but we like it that way because they're able to back up the cement truck into the area and distribute the cement throughout the house.
Okay. So anything else about the slab?
It's just, right now it has to be level. So it has to be 1/4 and 10 inches. And so the guys that do the finishing work on the slab, they're very, very good at what they do. So if you look around, it's very smooth and clean.
It is very smooth. And what is the exact height of that?
For a finished floor, we get, I believe it's 10 inches off of grade.
Wow. This has been really interesting. Seeing first just the trenching out and the plumbing work going, and then seeing the actual workers finishing it off, getting ready for that rebarb. And now we're standing here at a completed foundation, getting ready. And what would be the next step?
The next step is framing.
Framing.
So if you take a look over here, you can see the lumber's already being dropped.
There you go. And obviously, looking at these, there's probably more purpose to those coming, correct?
Yeah, they'll utilize the bolts that actually hold down the plates. So the framer will come along here and he'll mark every single bolt line for his plate line.
Wow, so much going on. Thank you again. This has been wonderful, just seeing all the steps that are involved with the foundation of the house. Today we are continuing our series with Highgate, and I am here with Deryk Gross, Director of Building with Highgate. How are you doing?
Good, yourself?
Okay, so last time we talked, we went through a lot of different steps. Can you kind of tell us where we're at today?
Right now the foundation's been done, as you can tell, and the framer's actually been out here and they do a plate and detail. So the green pieces of lumber are actually what will go on the foundation, and the regular natural color will be the top of the wall.
Why? What's the purpose of that?
The original layout guy will tell, he's providing the road map for all the wall framers, where to put the studs. So if you look down on here, each mark corresponds 16 inches on center, and each stud or vertical lumber component will go in between there.
Okay, and another thing I'm noticing is there's different widths with these. So this one seems smaller, whereas I'm looking over here and that one's larger.
Correct.
Why is that?
When the house is engineered structurally, we saw on the plans, sometimes the house needs thicker material due to the loads. So some pieces are 2x6, 2x8s, 2x4s, and it enables the house to carry itself. So the structural engineer is the one that determines all that, and he has a lot of calculations to get there based upon the actual perimeter of the house.
So are these put in prior to this wood obviously going in? Are they put into the actual foundation?
Yeah, the anchor bolts are actually sunk into the footing when it's still wet. And so these actually hold down the walls for the house. So if there's a wind shearing or seismic activity, the house stays on the foundation. So it doesn't just bounce off the foundation.
Like a big old earthquake coming through.
Exactly.
So then obviously they have to measure out where this is and drill the holes and then just lay the wood over that, correct?
So what they'll end up doing when they frame the walls is they'll pull this off, and then they'll actually put the studs in between each mark, nail them together, and then they'll tilt the wall up back onto the anchor bolt. And then once the walls are all joined together, the anchor bolts will sink them down.
Okay. And what is going on over here?
This is the layout crew's communication to the wall crew. So he's telling them a certain size header is going to be in this area for a window, and certain type of trimmers that will go along it. So the height and width and distance of them. So they're basically communicating how to put together this wall.
And what is all this for, this lumber here? I see markings and stuff. What is all this going to be used for?
They utilize these for the cripples underneath the window itself, for the sills.
Can you kind of define that word cripple? What is that?
When they build a window, and we'll see it in the next segment, there's, for lack of a better term, little legs underneath the bottom sill of the window, and it just holds the window up. So they'll pre-cut those to make it easier for the wall crews.
So will those be standing vertical then?
They'll be standing vertical. And again, the math associated with the distance from that plate to the window itself, the sill, to the ceiling, all works together.
Okay. And again, that was all determined again on the
set of plans. So the easiest way when they estimate the lumber takeoff guys, they actually will measure with a little wheel all the way around the perimeter of the slab. And they add up that lineal footage and they times it by 2, because you have to have a bottom and a top. And that's how they determine the lineal board feet they'll need in this house.
Okay, so there is just so much more. And we're watching this house slowly being built. From the plans to the foundations and now looking at the walls. We are back at Highgate and I am with Deryk Gross. Now we left off looking at just beginning with the framing, correct?
Correct.
And we kind of talked a little bit about the green, but there's really much more detail with that, why that is green.
Right. It's pressure treated lumber, and so when it sits up against the slab, it's to protect it from water, and so that's why they have the pressure treating in it.
Okay, so it's just not just to say, hey, this piece goes here, all green go here, like a puzzle. There's more reasoning.
There's a reason for it. So it protects the house and all the lumber above it, so the water won't migrate through it.
Okay. So let's looking at the plans, okay? We're out here, we're looking at the plans. So we're taking the dimensions from these plans, right?
Correct.
And bringing them to life.
Exactly.
And
So-
kind of walk me through that.
The framer, he'll take the dimensions, as you mentioned, from the plans, and he actually begins the layout, and every room will be dimensioned based upon that. He essentially will follow the foundation as it's set up, but periodically people make mistakes and he'll identify it again. So he usually lays everything out, it's all dimensioned into it. One of the components that we showed last time was actually the header, how it looks. So one of the call-outs, this is actually going to be a door on the wall. So you can see all the studs are set up by 16 inches on center. If they're not 16 inches on center, there's a reason for it, either where it adjoins an existing wall, or it's supposed to be for some structural components.
And it's pretty interesting. You were saying before how they take that green off, right? They've built the wall, so they're getting ready to put it back on.
Correct.
And that's a great picture right there to see that, how they've done that. So obviously we know that that's going to be the bottom of the wall, and where we're standing is going to be the
Top of the wall.
top of the wall.
So we also talked a lot about the hold down bolts. So if we take a look at right over here,
Okay.
they have the hold down bolts, and they also have some hold downs themselves.
And where are these right here? This is a hold down bolt?
That is
what
correct.
you're talking about?
Those, again, are components of the structural engineering of the house. So the structural engineer determines how much the house is going to move based upon the requirements of our area, and then he makes the determination of what type of hold downs are going to be required.
How
So-
many do you think are normal within a
The
wall?
bolts will go every 24, but the hold downs themselves are based on where he puts the shear wall. So right next door, if we look right over there, that's actually a shear wall. That prevents the house from basically moving left or right. Instead of, it won't go this way,
Yeah.
if you will.
And how many of the, well, I see one there, and if we look down, I'm seeing another one down the way.
Within each house, it depends on actually the design. And again, it's all the calculations that an engineer comes up with. And there are some variables, as I mentioned, that they follow based on the seismic requirement of our area, the wind loads, and the dead load of the house.
And let's look at a wall that's actually up right there. Again, is that a door, obviously a door frame, or?
It is. It's going to be a bypass closet. So it has a header across it. And as we saw on the floor, down on the slab, there's actually dimensions that tell us the size of the header and actually the width of it. And that's how the framers, again, they know what to do. So again, it all comes back to following those plans. The original layout guy lays everything out, cuts the bolts, sets up the plates. Wall guy comes in and he nails everything together. And it's all from those plans.
And then again, I was trying to find some windows. And obviously over here, yes, is a window.
That's correct. And those cripple right there underneath the header,
Underneath
or the sill plate.
How interesting. What else do they need to know for this framing?
For the framing, it's all about dimensions and having the right material. So again, the plans calls the header, the ceiling height, the header heights, and also the thickness of the plates.
Approximately how long is it going to take for all the walls to come up for this house?
Usually a house like this will take 1 day to frame the walls.
Just one day. Wow, so exciting. And we were back here at Highgate with Deryk Gross. And lastly, we were talking about the walls, right? Coming up with the walls, but now we're a little bit step further.
Yeah, we're going to start talking about the roof of the house. So if you look at the walls, it's kind of like the skeleton, if you will. And now the roof becomes the top, the cap. So the roof is composed of all the truss components, as you see on the side. Those are all pre-engineered and pre-made based upon the structural calculations
And
again.
that's something we saw right? We saw that. It's the V.
So they take into account the actual rise of the roof, the actual height of it, and the run of it, rise to run. And then they design all the trusses in between it to carry the load of the roof.
Now, is there a set calculation for that height?
That's predetermined based upon the elevation, the plan design itself. And from there, the truss manufacturer goes off of our plans. So there's not a true definition for that. There is a calculation for it, but it varies based upon the elevation style.
Oh, okay. And what they're putting on right now?
What they're doing right now is they're putting the roof underlayment, and they're also putting the valley metal into it. It's an area calculation for estimating, so they determine the actual size of the roof. And from there, they'll determine the number of squares they'll need for the concrete tile.
So again, a lot of math is involved.
So if we keep wandering along, this is the beginning stage of the roof itself. So this protects the roof from water.
So this is the stage I know when our house was being built, we were all excited. Yay, the roof is going up.
Here's the skin of the roof. When the concrete tile gets on it, that is the system that prevents water from getting on there.
So this house behind us here, so we have they still have groups of tiles left. Is that things that need to be completed, or?
It is. What we'll do is the trim pieces and some other field tile are sitting up there because the house itself will receive solar, and so they're leaving an area for the solar installation to go on top of it.
Okay. So now looking at the walls there's a little bit different, obviously, from this house here, because like you said, it's still the skeleton, right?
Correct.
So here, what's going on?
Right now, that's the beginning of our stucco lathing. So that you see the white is actual foam, and it's behind it, or in front of it, if you will, is the chicken wire. It's actual stucco wire itself. And that's where the concrete actually adheres to the wall.
You mean, the stucco of it.
So again, the math associated with that is the overall area of the wall minus the window openings.
So when I'm teaching area, right, and we are doing that, we have some shapes that have cutouts and things in it, and you're bringing up a great point that yes, to figure out the area, they do need to subtract that
Correct.
window.
Correct.
And that is obviously for them to figure out how much stucco they're going to be needing.
Exactly. So all the material, the foam, the paper behind the foam, the lathing material, the wire, and then eventually the concrete stucco itself.
Which is there on the house behind it.
And that's what they call a brown or scratch coat, and that's the base of the concrete. They'll come back through and put the finish coat, and that has the color on it, the good stuff, if you will.
Well, this is pretty exciting. This is a great representation right here where we're standing, because over there we have our beginnings, and now we have our skeleton part, right?
Right.
And then we've moved to setting the top, which is the roof. And from there, we're wrapping that skeleton with the skin. And then now we're coming to the finishing touches. Not yet finished, but almost there.
Getting close.
Today we are continuing our series with Highgate, and I am with Deryk Gross, Director of Building. How you doing today?
I'm good.
And last time we left off, we were talking about, obviously, putting this on the wall, correct?
Yeah, this is a component of the stucco. So the stucco itself, what we have with the exterior shell of the home, we have a waterproofing material. And then we put the foam, which is the white stuff that we see. And then they'll tape it all together. And then they actually will hand nail in the lath or the steel wire, if you will. And that's what the concrete stucco adheres to.
So this will also be then stucco?
That's correct.
Okay. So where are we standing right now? Where would this be an entryway?
It's actually going to be a very large multi-stacking door. So those big sliding doors, we're
yes.
standing in this what would be open area eventually.
Oh, okay. So would that be out to the backyard?
This is the covered patio area.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it makes this livable space move actually outdoors as well.
How amazing. Okay, so when we go from here, what is the next step?
The next step is this gives us an opportunity to actually install insulation.
Now, insulation, it has changed over the years how it has been installed, correct?
It has, and the state of California is putting a large emphasis on insulation. They want us to be able to live comfortably inside our homes and energy efficient. So we utilize a batten installation. So this mesh fiber goes all through inside the walls, and then they actually pump in insulation.
So that's what all these little holes are for, is where they actually have pumped it in. So no more with those long rolls that you're rolling up the wall and stapling.
You can still use it, but it's very difficult because you want to make sure all the openings are covered. So your houses are better insulated now than they were 15 years ago.
Wow. So again, do they put this on first?
They do.
And then put the holes and then put it in?
Again, the math is an all area calculation, so the insulation guy tries to figure out, and he does a pretty good job of doing it, how much he's going to need for each wall itself.
Because this is obviously already stapled prior to it, right?
Yeah, they go in there and then they just pump it in there.
Wow.
And then the next step after that, obviously we get all our mechanical components in, the recessed cans, fire sprinklers, venting, plumbing.
So everything kind of electrical is in there.
Yep.
Now, what is the calculations on that? Obviously, this is all in the lesson plans, correct? I mean, in
It is.
in the plans.
It's all on the floor plan, and it is all laid out by the architect, but we try to provide as much lighting as possible in certain livable areas. There's no true guideline about how much looms you can place in a room. It's just the type of fixture you utilize in it. So currently, we're installing all LED light fixtures.
So I'm looking here, and there's 2, 4, 6, is that 7, 8? We're all right here. Those are for the cam lights?
That's correct.
Because I know when we had built, we actually had a choice if we wanted to add extra cam lights into our home or not. So would you say that this would be the kitchen area then?
This is the kitchen, this is the sink, and that will be the cooktop right there. The hood vent, this is where the venting of the cooktop occurs. There's actually a calculation for the distance between where the point of the airflow to the actual rooftop.
And again, that's within guidelines.
That's correct. Again, all on the plans too.
All in the plans. Well, just looking at it, obviously there's a lot of work that had to go in prior to everything being done, the foundation and everything being done.
And it's also a good representation of the walls that we looked at too. So you can see this is an interior wall, non-weight bearing. So you have your plate, the top plate, and your stud bays between.
Okay. Well, we still have a lot more to look at. I believe we're going to drywall next. And we are back with Deryk Gross from Highgate. And we were talking about insulation, but as we start walking through the house, that's not the only type of insulation, because as I look up here, there's some more insulation.
That's correct. We utilize the bats for underneath the mechanical system, which is the heating and air systems. And those, because when we blow the attic itself with the same type of material on the walls, it can't get underneath there. So we'll bat them beforehand, anywhere there's a platform inside the attic.
And also you were talking a little bit about this. What is going on with this?
Throughout the shell of the home, we'll caulk all the openings so the air will not pass from outside to inside or inside to outside. It's a method to where we provide the shell to be airtight, if you will, and that enables us to determine the size of the mechanical system. So the building codes, back to the plans, they require us to run a mechanical calculation to determine how much energy this house is going to utilize to determine the size of our furnace and our air conditioning unit outside.
Oh, wow.
So that also is accompanying the size of the ducts that we place inside the house.
Which we clearly can see right now up above. And that would be like the attic area, right?
That's correct. Inside the attic as well, you also notice the sheathing that's on top of the roof. It's called radiant barrier. And that material actually reflects the sun's heat. So as the sun's penetrating on the roof, it actually pushes it back. And so that keeps the attic cool and also reduces the actual load or calculative load of the house.
So many different types of insulation, not just this, but really there is a lot different. So from the insulation and from all the wiring, we now go to the drywall.
Yeah, this is the stuff that everybody sees.
Yes.
So the drywaller right now, they call this loading the house. So it's been stacked here. So this is all the drywall material that will be installed throughout the inside of this home.
So how are we calculating how much drywall to use?
Again, it's the area calculation minus the openings.
Is this somewhere on the plans?
They do get their takeoffs off the plans. they will measure all the inside walls, and they'll determine that area, and that's how they determine the amount of rock that we'll bring out here.
So I see a measurement. Obviously, the height of this is already preset to the height of the house, or?
It's actually, they'll run it, instead of horizontally, which would seem logical, they actually run it vertical, instead of vertical, they'll run it horizontal.
Oh, okay.
So it enables them to have less cuts in the home. So that every time you have drywall, you have a cut-in or a butt-in, as they call it. You always want the butt-ins to join because it gives a nice finish on it.
Okay.
The other thing that's interesting about drywall versus stucco is the drywalls also have to configure in around all the windows, for instance. The windows have the sills, the jambs. If you just take out that area, you're forgetting about that little 2-inch strip on the bottom. So that's another calculation they do. They also had to determine if there's any type of inside the closets or other areas that need to drywall.
So obviously, you're going to be needing more of this per square, right? Correct, versus the outside, the stucco, because there's a lot of more little.
Yeah, the stucco
areas.
is the plane, and it's pretty simple around it. It's inside, every side of the wall gets drywalled. Outside, it's only one side.
Oh, I see. Yep, I didn't even think about that. So you have the front of it, and you also have the back of it.
Exactly. So they also, with their calculation, they determine how many lineal feet of tape they need, how much mud they have. It's all based upon this area.
So the tape, is that what's being, where the seams are then?
Yeah. They'll run through they'll tape it and then actually mud through the seam itself.
Okay, so much going on within just the house. It almost seems like the framing is the easier piece, but once you get inside it, it's just, there's so many aspects to it. And we are back at Highgate with Deryk Gross. Now, Deryk, we left off talking about white wall, or drywall. Yes, sorry. All these teaching terms, I apologize. And so now we're actually in a home that has the drywall up.
Correct. This is actually the beginning of the finished product for the drywall. So one thing we alluded to before was I talked about tape, drywall tape. This is actually drywall tape. It's not sticky, but it becomes the component that goes between the two pieces of drywall.
So if we look actually here, we can kind of see, probably right here is where the tape.
Correct. These are, as we mentioned, the boards are laid horizontal together, and these are the two pieces, and then the tape goes between the boards.
So again, the white here, you were saying mud, because when we think of mud, mud, it should be brown, but no. This is different, right?
That's correct. The drywallers, they utilize a compound material, drywall compound, that we term it as mud. And the reason we call it mud, because when it gets on their shoes, it never goes away. So they use it and they put 2 coats on to hide the tape and to keep the tape some strength to adhere to the pieces of drywall.
Are these then sanded?
They actually are. What they'll do is they do a quick smooth coat, and they'll do a light sand onto it. So these are also vertical pieces along here. This is where the nails go. So they actually hide all those. This piece right here will receive just one more texture layer, and then they'll paint it.
So again, the tape is going this way, and the tape is going this way as well over the nails.
Right. Again, it's the mathematical calculation to figure out how much tape do I really need.
Yeah.
And it's based upon the area that we're going to cover.
So when we were looking at the previous kitchen, we could see all the way through to the attic. Mm-hmm. But here, again, you white-walled the ceiling as well, correct? Or drywalled. And then we have our cams that we now, before we could see the whole actual metal of the hole up into the attic, but now it's kind of, we just see the openings.
Correct. When the drywall hangers place the rock on the ceiling, or the lid itself, they actually will be the ones that cut all the openings open. And so they measure where it's going on that piece of board. So there's again, more math for each person that's doing the work out here.
So I'm looking at all these,
Mm-hmm.
So they obviously, before they can put up that drywall piece, they have to measure it exact.
They need to know where it is. And so they will when they come up, they'll start eyeballing where this piece is, and then they actually start cutting these out. And then they adhere it to the wall.
Oh, wow. So again, a lot of mathematics. So we actually have, this is a start of an island, right?
That's correct.
And we could kind of see, now I'm looking at this drywall on it, and it doesn't look as thick as what we saw before.
No, this is just a 1/2 inch piece. And we'll use all 1/2 inch on our walls. On our ceilings, we'll use 5/8.
So what we saw back over there, the drywall stacked up, that was all probably for a ceiling then?
So there was actually 2 stacks. One was for the ceiling, one for the walls.
Now, I'm seeing some metal here, and I'm also seeing it in the doorways and the windows. Kind of explain what this metal is here.
This is our corner bead material. And it's basically, it's metal and it creates the corners for all the drywall connections.
Are these put on, are these just laid on and then again the mud adheres them to the drywall?
They'll put nails periodically 16 inches and then they actually, the tape will hide it again and cover it up.
And again, last thing is we are always referring back to here, correct?
Yes, the plans are what tells everybody how the house is supposed to look. So for instance, on these plans, it tells us where the can lights are. And that's how the electrician knows where they go. It tells us for the plumber, where does the plumbing material go? So it tells them where to put it on. It's all in the plans.
Wow, so much to look at, you know, just from bare walls to the insulation and now to the drywall. And then obviously, once you said they do that one more coat, the next step is going to be painting.
Painting.
Which will be really exciting. Today we are continuing our series out at Highgate, and I am with Deryk Gross, Director of Home Building. Hi, Deryk.
Hi.
There's been so much we've seen. The last time we left off, we were kind of looking at all the insulation and the different types of insulation that go into a home, correct?
Correct.
Now, we're kind of in a home where I'm seeing all that insulation covered up, all the drywall covered up. What's going on here?
We are now in a home that's 90% done, and it's traditionally, this is what people see when they look at a home. So this home is almost ready for a homeowner to buy. So for instance, we're seeing all the trim material, the base material has been installed, all the cabinets have been installed, the countertops, and the flooring is beginning to be installed.
Now, there's still a lot of mathematics that are going into the trim and definitely the cabinets, right?
Yes.
Can you kind of start us off with the trim? What's going on with that?
The trim, the base material, so the trim contractor, he actually just measures all the way around the inside of the house and figures out, okay, this is how many lineal feet I'm gonna need in my base material. He also figures out the casing material of the doors. So it has to go all the way up the door, across the door, and all the way down the door. So he figures that out, and then he counts the number of doors.
Well, not only that, I know from a fact, for me trying to put a trim on my wall, that cut in the corners here, that is a special cut. And you have to have that at a certain angle, correct?
They cut them at the 45s.
And yeah, you have to have that special tool to get it at that 45. Because it's not that easy. People think, oh, you just cut and go. It's not that easy.
Not at all. It's actually quite hard to get that trim material to be from that point to the corner level. Everybody thinks it's really easy, but the flooring material is not in when they put the trim down.
Oh, they put the trim first and then they put the floor down?
Correct.
See, I thought that they would put the floor and then put the trim. Oh, it's backwards.
So they actually have to calculate the thickness of the flooring material. They figure that out, and then they put shims underneath it, and then they'll run it to level from point to point.
Now, let's talk floor, because obviously you have to put in whatever the square footage is, right?
Correct.
And they only have tile in so much of the house. They don't have it throughout the whole house.
Correct. They can put it through the house, but usually they'll pick the areas that they like to live in. They'll have the tile. But in the more comfortable areas like the bedrooms, they'll put carpet in traditionally.
So again, that's all mathematical, try and figure that out as well.
Exactly.
How long does the flooring, the tile normally take to get put in?
The tile the flooring tile, depending on the amount of area, it could take 1 day, actually 2 days. One day they lay the tile, and the second day they come back for the grout.
Okay, so let's go over to these beautiful cabinets in the kitchen. When do the cabinets go in? Do they go in after the flooring or before the flooring?
They actually go in before the flooring. And so what we utilize a company that provides us boxes. And so they'll install each one based on the linear foot of the countertop area. And so they determine we need to have a base 34, for instance. And then they'll have a base drawer of base 17. And so they put them all in there, and they actually assemble them against the pony wall or the back wall, and it creates the face of the cabinetry.
And they just come in and put them up.
We utilize a protective material to try and protect our cabinets, because if you really think about it, the cabinetry becomes a furniture of the home.
Oh, it does.
And the cabinets, at the timing and when they install before the flooring, they take some of the construction abuse, if you will. So we try and protect them as much as we possibly can.
Wow, these are really quite pretty. So besides all of this with the flooring and the cabinets, what else are we seeing throughout here?
I'm sorry?
What else are we seeing throughout the house?
What we're seeing is actually the finish is done. All the electrical finish trim's been installed. All the mechanical system's been installed. All the fire sprinkler heads have been installed. The house is, again, it's 90% ready. We are now in a stage of actually fine-tuning the home for that home buyer.
So what is one thing that needs to be completed on this house?
The final caulking of the trim materials, obviously interior cleaning, and we'll pull everything back off, and we will actually go through our prep QC process. So we're looking for all items that a homeowner would see, and what we rate is that's not acceptable, so we fix them. So for instance, leveling of the receptacle plates, making sure the switch plates are all right, the height of the thermostats, little things that make you a better builder is what we try and do.
Awesome. And we're back out here at Highgate with Deryk Gross. Deryk, we just left a home that was 90% done, but now we're standing in front of a home that is
100% done.
100% done. Now, we're kind of on the outside because once before we were talking about the exterior and we had seen just the coloring putting it on. But let's kind of go on to a finished home because there's so much more going on.
Oh yeah, there's a lot. This is the actual, if you will, the tie of the home. This is what everybody likes to see. So in this home, this is our traditional elevation. So we have a traditional brick structure, the colonial column structure, and siding. All these require mathematics to figure out how much material you need to put on your house. So the brick itself, this is a full brick. So they actually will cut the brick and set it and lay it along waterproofing material. The columns, they're also fiberglass columns. They're actually sized, so they actually have to know the finished height of the brick and actually up to the framing soffit itself.
So what's the process of putting these on? Because when we were looking at a home that just had the color coating on it, would the brickwork be put on first before the color coating and the columns, or how's that process?
Actually, the brick goes on first, and then they'll color coat the house. The other item that's inside this column, for instance, there's a post that actually will run up and down, and so those columns themselves are actually more visual than actual structural elements. So these are two pieces, fiberglass columns. They actually push them together and they glue them together, and they put a little, if you will, a strap around it, and it glues off, and then they paint it all up.
So another element is definitely the lighting, and this is something I know because when we had our home built, the lighting was so important to pick out. Can you kind of go into about the lighting here? It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, we have a garage coach lights, if you will, and we installed one inside the front porch area. The idea is for individuals, they have outdoor or front door living, front door meeting your neighbors.
Which is really big right now.
Yep. That's the area where you actually have lighting in here, and of course we have the big coach lights along the garage itself. It's more of a statement for the home, so there is a lot of care gone into picking the coach lights. Sometimes more than a lot of other things, but it is there.
And obviously, and this home is also landscaped.
That is correct. All the landscaping goes down. Again, quantity counts. The flat work is all in. So again, it's all a quantity number that we utilize, and that's how he provides me a cost. He says X per foot, and so we figure out all this. All the driveways installed, the drive approach. All the siding on the house has been completed. It's all been painted. All the roof has been completed, and the gutter itself has been done.
Okay, and obviously there's more cement work over here with the walkways and things. So which is going first? Again, is it the driveway and the walkways, and the last is the landscape?
Yeah, landscaping is typically last in the process.
It's the last process. And what else? What's the other last elements that?
We'll put in this particular elevation, they put the railing system in, because we don't want it to get damaged. And obviously the last components is the final painting that go along. And they'll make the touch-up paintings and make it clean and look fresh.
Ah, so beautiful, so much to do. And going back to when we talked about the architect and we talked about how important the front of the house is, because that's the first thing you see.
Right.
I mean, when you drive up, you want to make sure that that's...
Correct. We go a lot of time spent in making sure the elevations of the homes are visually pleasing, not just to us, but also to the people who buy the homes. So we'll go through 3 or 4 renditions to make sure that they fit the feel of the community and also what the buyer wants to have.
And the buyer has a choice on the colors, correct?
They do if they get in there early. We have what we call color schemes, and so a licensed architect actually puts all the colors together for us. So this particular elevation has 4 different schemes that they could pick from. And it has different combinations of the roof tile, different brick tiles, and the color of the exterior of the house.
Well, this house is absolutely beautiful on the outside, and I cannot wait to go inside. And we are back at Highgate with Deryk Gross. Now, Deryk, we were looking at the outside of the house, the finished exterior, but I'm so excited we're going to get to look on the inside.
Yep, this is the finished home.
Okay, and I want to point out in an earlier episode, this is actually the home of the foundation that we saw.
That is correct.
Okay.
This is the end result.
Oh, can't wait.
Welcome home.
Wow. This is absolutely amazing. It is beautiful. And this is ready to move in, correct?
That is correct. So if you recall, we were looking at way long time ago, the kitchen itself, this island, that's the plumbing, and that's the result.
Wow. And everything is done. We last left off, obviously on the baseboards and all that needed to be completed out, but they are all done, they're all painted, the walls are painted. Can we kind of walk through the house itself?
Absolutely.
I mean, we're seeing everything done, the finishing touches. Kind of walk us through that.
Right now, we're walking right in the great room, if you will. This is where a majority of the house lives. This is where the people congregate. So this is the great room. Our nook area is our eating area. Again, that space of area. And then we have our large kitchen, an ample-sized kitchen island, cooktops, double ovens, and the cabinetry itself.
You know, thinking back to all that we've been through, watching the process of everything, now walking on this floor, I'm thinking back to when we saw the foundation being built and everything that goes into it that's underneath this floor that really people don't think about. Correct. You know, the rebarb and all of that is there underneath, and we really don't think about it. All we see is the finished, which is the tile.
Right. It's really a sum of everything together. So like we mentioned, you built the slab down and the framing goes on top of it, all the drywall, all the roofing material, and then we're outside looking at all the elevation components, and now finally this is the sum of the house. And if you will, all the math together builds this.
Builds this. Well, can we kind of look through the rest of the house? Because
so we'll wander through the kitchen itself. And you go into the owner's suite. And then we have a large, ample master bathroom.
And this is from all the plumbing that we saw earlier,
Exactly.
right? With all the foundation and the insulation and everything that we've looked at is all there.
Exactly. Everything, it is really all about the math, if you will. Everybody that's doing all the activity, they know the height of the shower surround. They know the width of the countertops. They know the tub deck size. Everything they use out here is math. Yeah. They have to look at a set of plans. They have to figure out exactly where it goes. They have to measure it. They have to cut once, because you can't cut twice. And then they have to get it all laid in there.
And looking into here, my thought now goes back to these windows. When we were looking at the framing, and you were talking about that special wood that frame the windows.
Yeah, so there's the windowsill, and you have the cripples underneath it that actually support the windowsill. And then you have the trimmers that go all the way up, and they support the top plates.
And yet only the homeowners see is this beautiful finished wall.
Yep.
And they really don't see everything that encompassed to making this wall.
No. But that's all what they do, and this is what we like to do. So.
And let's talk about the windows, because we really haven't talked about windows, because they're pretty much energy efficient now.
Yeah, they are. They're very energy efficient. So these windows, they have a low UV, so that means that the sun value, meaning the reflective sun, it actually pushes the sun heat outside of the house. And it also, conversely, it keeps the heat inside the home. So the older windows, if you walk up there on a sunny day and you put your hand up there, you feel the heat. And these windows, you will not feel that heat.
Oh, that's really nice. I need to replace my windows because I feel the heat. Well, this is really amazing to see all the hard work that everybody has put in to make a home for a family. And I think that that's really what the most important piece is. During the series, we started off with looking at an idea on a piece of paper, and to see the whole process of that idea becoming such a beautiful piece of construction and a home for a family is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is.
And really, thank you so much for walking us through all these steps, because like I said, us home buyers, we don't really think of everything that you have to think of to make us feel comfortable.
Well, thank you for letting me do that.
Well, thank you so much. And we have a tile there for you. It's just a form of our appreciation for allowing us to come visit.
Thank you so much. We really like the tile.
And come on out here to Highgate, because it's absolutely beautiful, and check out these homes. And that's it for us from Highgate.